So I want to talk about imposter syndrome. I started to talk about this before in a video that I recorded, and it kind of turned into a conversation more about, why I had imposter syndrome. I never really got to, the point where, what am I even trying to say? The point where I felt like I didn't have it anymore. And I guess I still feel like I have it sometimes. I just manage it better now. I don't know. So, yeah. So imposter syndrome. I think what I want to talk about right now is what does that look like for me? Because I've heard other people discuss what that looks like for them. And usually I can relate, I guess. But maybe, there might be people out there that don't realize that what they're experiencing is imposter syndrome. I feel like there was a period of time where I didn't really know that that's what I was experiencing. I didn't think about it like that. When I was first starting out trying to go into a technical field, it was like the idea of having a false belief about myself, was just crazy. Everything that I believed about myself, I was in such a weird place in my head that that was another concrete belief that I just wasn't someone that could go in that field, and that I'm just going to do it anyway. That's what I was doing. I'm just going to do it anyway. I know I don't belong here, but I don't belong anywhere. So I guess I'm going to do what I want to do. I think, having that kind of attitude is where the tipping point started to be when when I finally quit working and decided to start just doing things differently, trying to make my life better. I had no hope that I ever would, but I try to keep doing the next right thing, So part of that was, if I want to be happy, why am I unhappy? Okay, I'm unhappy because I'm not getting to do the things that I want to do. Why can't I do the things I want to do? Oh, because I don't believe that I can, or I don't belong in that field, or I can't afford it, or, you know what I mean? There's a million excuses for not doing the things you need to do to make yourself feel happy or find happiness. I don't know how to describe that. But if you give in to them, then things don't change, if you want to make big changes, then you got to make big changes, right? So I was like, okay, I guess I'm never going to fit in this field, but I'm just going to do it anyway, What the hell? So I decided to really go after it. And when I say a technical field, I studied mathematics, and, it was... I don't really know why I wanted to go into mathematics, but I ended up doing it. I guess what I always say when people ask me that is this prepared answer, because I get asked that a lot. And there's some truth to it. It's not a lie, but it's just I don't know how, I don't know if this reason is really 100% the reason, So, well, what I tell people is, when I was in high school and, younger than that, I guess too, I was just good at math. It's just one of the things that I just did well at, made sense. It didn't seem all that confusing. It always felt pretty straightforward to me, and it just made sense. I didn't feel especially in love with it. I didn't feel like it was a subject that I just adored, which I definitely feel that way now. But when I first started going to college, I was going for very different things. I thought for a while that I would work in healthcare. I'd worked in healthcare in a couple of different ways, like right away when I was first out of high school and like going to school for the first time. I worked at a group home, took care of mentally ill people. I worked as a nursing assistant at like a what do you call it? Hold on, the cats and the dog are trying to fight. Let me just pause. All right, I let the dog out. Where was I? Don't even remember. Oh yeah, so like, I guess the prepared answer I have that I tell people is that, I was always good at it. It just came naturally to me. I didn't especially like it. But I just was good at it. And, who doesn't like start to kind of like something that they're naturally good at, right? So I was going to school for very different things. I thought I was going to go into healthcare, and I, was working in healthcare in a variety of different forms. And so I thought I was going to go for cellular and molecular biology, and I wanted to go to medical school and become a doctor. I didn't know what kind of doctor, but I thought that I wanted to be some kind of doctor. Now, I have no idea why I chose to go that direction at first. Obviously, I didn't go that way ultimately. But I don't know, I guess I had it in my head that I wanted to help people. I don't know. I'm not sure what it was about. I realized after working in a group home and then in a nursing home and, in different situations like that I don't like the stress of being in charge of another person's life. I don't want to be the reason they live or they die. I don't want to be the reason. I don't want to be, not the reason, but the people that I took care of were dangerous to themselves, so it was stressful because you had to always watch them. And, if you fucked up even just one time, it's all over, and you become responsible for that. And I just didn't like that. I know those people need help, but I didn't have what it takes to be able to deal with that kind of stress. So I ended up not going that way. And instead, I started really evaluating what I liked to do in school and what I didn't. And it just seemed like I really, the one class that I wasn't completely, I didn't completely hate my classes. There's a lot of classes I really enjoyed, but the ones that I seemed to enjoy the best were math classes. They made the most sense. I didn't feel like it was challenging. It was definitely challenging, but I didn't feel like once I got it, it was achievable and I could just get it. It's math is just a bunch of rules, and it's if you have all these rules, then what follows from it? And if you try to stay within the bounds of those axioms, what happens, That's what I found really interesting. And so I just kept taking more math classes. And, this is right around the same time that I ended up, getting into the opiates. I was doing a lot of drugs at this time, but I started getting into opiates, and then, it all kind of fell apart. And so I ended up dropping out. And I think I took a semester off after I dropped out late in the semester because I was partying, and I kept thinking that I was going to be able to pull it together, but I couldn't. And finally it was even past the withdrawal date, and I just had to take a fail or something, or I don't know. I didn't get any of my money back for that semester. There's a lot of classes I just stopped going to because I was doing so many different types of drugs. But yeah, so I forgot where I was going with that. But anyway, yeah, so it was right around that time that I realized that I liked math. But at that time, I was kind of well, what are you going to do with math? That's kind of what I was thinking in my head, which It's a totally valid question, honestly. There's a lot of people who don't think about that at all. And yes, math is an extremely useful field to study, but if you don't know how to apply that shit, then you're as unemployable as someone who went to school for, I don't know, communications or gender studies or something. Now, let me pause real quick and just say those are totally reputable fields to study. They're things that we should be looking into, and I definitely think that there should be people, doing research in that, right? But a lot of times we go to school, at least nowadays, to get a job. And if you want a job, well, if you want to increase your probability of getting a job, you might want to study something that the workforce actually needs, right? So that's why I say that. Anyway, so like I said, kind of thinking well, I don't really know what you can do with math. I know it's in everything, and everything is, determined by mathematics in some shape or form, but I didn't know what kind of job opportunities there were out there for me, and it took a long time to even figure that part out. It was only a few years ago that I really kind of started to, figure out where I fit into the rest of the world with the skills that I had, the extremely useful skills that I had. That's one thing that I think math department really falls short on, is that they don't spend any time, or, if they do, it's an extremely small amount of time actually discussing, what are you even going to do with this? And I get that mathematics in its purest form, it's not about what it can be applied to. It's more of a, an intangible universe of ideas, right? But at the same time, if we're going to treat university like Job Corps, and I kind of feel like maybe we shouldn't treat it like a Job Corps, but if we're gonna, and we are, then we should spend more time talking about how to use math, right? Okay, let me go put my dog in, and then I will pick up. Where will I pick up? I'll pick up where I left off, which is imposter syndrome. And when I first started to feel imposter syndrome. So, I'll go back into that in a minute. Yeah, so I wanted to go into mathematics, and I didn't know what I could do with it. My dog is coughing. Settle down, take a nap. He won't, but anyway. So I was trying to decide what I could do with that, and it just felt like it almost felt like when I finally kind of started deciding that, I want to study math, I felt almost embarrassed to say that to anyone. If someone asked me what I was going to study in school, because when you first start, you're you don't necessarily have to have a major declared, but it's a good idea to know what you want to do. But in the beginning, sometimes you're just taking general classes to figure it out, and that's okay as long as you don't do that for too long, But yeah, so if someone asked and I said mathematics, I felt kind of embarrassed, and then, I would get that response that I'm pretty used to now. I get that a lot nowadays. Still, I've gotten it, all through whatever, oh, math. You'd tell them that I would tell them that I'm studying math, and they'd just kind of be whoa, that's so hard. You must be so extremely smart. And then, but then it's at the same time, I'm well, I'm sitting there and here's my imposter syndrome talking, the imposter inside of me is well, I'm not that smart. I just like it and kind of want to go that direction. And they're well, if you like it, then you must be good at it. And I'm okay, yeah, I guess I'm good at it, but I'm still not super smart, I just am good at following directions. That's kind of how I felt, right? But at the same time, I'm now I'm looking at it and I'm well, that is what it means to be smart. Are you good at following directions, and can you think for yourself when you need to? I feel that's that kind of sums up just everything, whatever. So I mean, to succeed in math, it's a lot of repetition. And it's a lot of just find the way to do it. And even if it doesn't make sense to you, do it over and over and over and over and over. And then after you've done it a million times, then like maybe in a year, you'll understand why it works. You know, you have to like ingrain the process into your mind over and over so that it's etched in stone. And like you don't get it, you're just like, I just know I do this and then I do that and then this comes out and it's the right answer. And don't ask me why that works. I have no fucking clue, you know? And you'll feel like that a lot. And that's okay. Like that's what learning is. And learning that is, you know, specifically math. That's what learning math is for sure. I'm sure there's other things like it, but there's a lot of things like that. But I think when people hear that I'm studying math and then they go, oh, you must be smart. And I'm like, well, I think that we can all do it, you know? I think that's the other thing is I think that we could all do it if you just do it over and over and over. Like anyone that can like follow a list of steps can do this, you know? Someday it'll click. Maybe not today. Sometimes it takes a really long time, sometimes longer for others. But whatever. I'm going to break the dog and the cat up again. All right. So, yeah. Imposter syndrome. What about it? So what does that look like for me? Like, what do I experience that I'm like, oh, that's imposter syndrome, you know? I guess a lot of it is just beliefs that I have held very deeply, you know, about myself and my surroundings and just the world in general. And, that core belief was that I don't belong in this field. I don't belong anywhere, you know. And then the trick for me, you know, to change that was one day I just said, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. I don't belong anywhere. But I'm here. So I might as well do what I fucking want to do. And I did. Right? So, yeah. I went through school. And then I quit. And then I'd go through school again. And then I would have to quit again. And it happened over and over and over many times. I don't know how many times. It was a lot. And I ended up spending a lot of money on classes that I didn't need, you know, because I ended up changing my mind late. And, I moved to a different state. And so, like, some of my classes didn't transfer. And if I went to, different schools, even if it was in the same state, sometimes they wouldn't count. Like, a lot of stupid things. But when I finally figured it out and I actually went and I just said, I'm not going to stop until I'm done. That was the last time. And it was interesting because, I went back and I just had this, I was like, okay, I don't belong anywhere. So I'm just going to do this and because I want to. And I feel like I didn't make a lot of friends in undergrad. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that I felt imposter syndrome to a broader level than I think most people mean when they say imposter syndrome. So, I came from a world of drug addiction and sex work and, recovering from child abuse and all kinds of fucking shit, right? So I felt imposter syndrome. I felt like I was an imposter just in the world in general, like the, like average world, like the average world of people, like I don't want to say like in the good world, I guess I just mean like the mostly well-adjusted people, like it's none of us are perfectly well-adjusted, but there's the world that I did live in, which was a lot of drug addicts, abuse, and, prostitution, and like a lot of crazy fucking shit, right? And like, if that's what you're around, the average experience in that world is a lot different than the average experience in a population of people that are mostly well-adjusted. Maybe they're not all perfect, but they're like mostly doing okay. They're not addicted to drugs. They're working a job. Maybe it's a shitty job. Maybe they're unhappy. Maybe they're in a bad relationship. But like, overall, the average experience is extremely different than what I was used to. So going to school and being surrounded by people that were, in places in their lives where they could go to school, right? And again, I'm talking averages. So like, of course, there's going to be those people who do manage to go to school and have like, a drug addiction or, that definitely exists, right? But the average experience of the people that I was surrounded by once I started going to school was a lot different. And so I felt imposter syndrome to the level of just being in, the mostly well-adjusted population, right? So I guess I never really thought about, at least for many years during that period, I wasn't really thinking about how I didn't fit in the field of STEM. I was thinking about how I just didn't fit in the fucking world, So, but eventually, I started to feel more well-adjusted, and it took a lot of time, and, it was kind of painful, but eventually I got there, and but I did still have that imposter, the subset of experience that I felt an imposter to started to shrink. So the set of experiences that, of the world that I felt an imposter to became, it didn't include the general, mostly well-adjusted population anymore. A little bit, but like, for the most part, it was more about like, okay, now I'm in this field where it's predominantly men, which I don't think bothered me, really, because like, a lot of women, they're like, we need more women in the STEM field, and I'm like, I agree. I definitely agree with that. But like, my whole life, I have learned how to be around men. Women scare me, right? So like, I had been burned by, female friends before, and, they were much more nuanced in their manipulation. Men were easy, like men are easy for the most part. So being in a field that's predominantly men didn't bother me because I'm used to dealing with that. Having come from sex work, having had an abusive father, and, growing up trying to tiptoe around him and placate him, like, working in a strip club and like, wooing men and making them like me and like that kind of thing, that I could do. So I didn't feel imposter syndrome because of that, per se, because I was, a female in a man's field. Like, that's not why I felt it. I felt it just because I didn't believe I was smart. So all of the things that I was doing, I felt like I had to do it perfectly, because if I showed any bit of weakness that I didn't know what I was doing, then, it would shatter this whole mirage, this whole like facade that I'm holding up, hoping no one will notice that I'm actually a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? So like, I spend a lot of time and effort and energy and calories and just, countless hours worrying about, how I come off. Do I come off smart enough? Do I come off like I know what I'm talking about? And my biggest fear is that I'll come off like I don't know what I'm talking about. And if that happens, then it's like, that could be the one thing that tips everybody off to the fact that I don't fucking belong here, So Yeah. Imposter syndrome. That's how it's been for me. I feel like there's a lot more to say, but I'm going to make dinner, so I will pick this up another time.